everyone! Today we're creating DIY Scratchboard art. To get started, you'll need to pour some dish soap into a cup, and then you'll need some black tempera paint, and you'll want to use about the same amount of the tempera paint as you used of the dish soap, but it doesn't have to be a perfect ratio. Then go ahead and stir that up until it's completely combined. Next, you'll need some paper. The heavier the paper is, the better it is for this. I used some white cardstock, but you could also use some watercolor paper. And then I just took a piece of that and cut it in half so I could make two different scratch boards out of this. So starting with one of those. Next, you will need some crayons. And for this first scratch board, I decided to do a rainbow colored design. I did a vertical stripe of each color and I tried to keep them about the same width, but it's okay if they vary some. In my experience, this works best if you do pretty heavy layers of crayon and you don't leave a lot of white spaces. We used to make these all the time when I was in elementary school, and we didn't mix any dish soap with the tempera paint, so it was a little harder to scratch off and you needed to do really thick layers of crayon to get it to scratch off. So if you don't have dish soap, keep in mind that you might still be able to do this with just tempera paint. It's always worth a try. And if you want to test different ways of doing this, or maybe even colored pencils on the paper, you can always cut up really small squares of your paper and then just make little mini scratch boards just to test out if it works or not, without committing to making a whole board like this. So just keep covering the board until it's completely covered, and then take that paint mixture and just paint it across the whole board. And you'll want to use a brush that has some really soft bristles or a foam brush like this one. Otherwise, it's hard to get the board covered because the bristles will scrape the paint off. So this is just the first coat. Don't worry if it's not completely covered in the first coat. We'll be adding additional coats. So set that aside and let it dry, and in the meantime I made another board with a different color design. And then I just repeated the same process of adding a coat of the paint mixture. Next, I went back to the first scratch board and I added a second and final thick coat of the paint mixture. Just make sure that everything is completely covered and then let that dry, or you can use a hairdryer to dry it faster. And once it's dry, it should look like this. And now it's time to draw. So you can experiment with different tools and see what works for you to scratch out your design. But I found that using a toothpick worked great for me, and I just drew a design across the whole page. And that's it! Here's what the finished designs look like. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more from my channel, feel free to subscribe and click the bell if you'd like a notification when I upload. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next week with another video.